Ankit, thank you so much for joining us on The Road Less Traveled. It's a series that Game, Your Story, and Network Capital started, I think, about 3 months ago. And the idea was to speak to people like you and your entrepreneurial journeys and hopefully inspire people who are either thinking of becoming entrepreneurs or giving them the idea that it's a great option. Because at Game, at the end of the day, the problem we're trying to solve for is the jobs problem. And we believe the more entrepreneurial the country is, we believe that it can solve the job problem. And even in your job, right, even if you get a job, you'll enjoy it more if you do it as an entrepreneur rather than as an employee. And therefore we felt having these conversations will hopefully trigger a sense of entrepreneurship amongst young people, if not older people. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to speak up. I'm really looking forward. Thank you.
My first question, Ankit, I've been told, okay, I tried to do a little bit of research, but I was also helped by the Your Story team, that you were actually a chemical engineer, right?
Yes.
And that's not such a startling fact, given that in India, it's aspirational to be some kind of engineer. But how did, I want to go back in time to when Ankit had become a chemical engineer. It was some form of traditional, kind of a traditional choice.
Yeah.
To that point when you said, hey, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur. Can we wind back to that point, Ankit?
Yeah, sure. I think I can tell you how my chemical engineering stint happened. So my father is a civil engineer, and as he's a government employee, and every father, I think, these days have their kids to become either an IAS officer or an engineer or a doctor. I think I was again one of those. My parent had aspired me that I should become a civil engineer. To be very specific, with my father is a civil engineer, and this was a time about 2006, wherein a lot of times people used to say कि अब इसका टाइम चल रहा है, लाइक सिविल का स्कोप बहुत अच्छा है, सिविल का टाइम अच्छा है, तो सिविल लेना चाहिए, राइट? सो those kind of discussions used to happen those days. But I think what happened is when I cleared IIT JEE exam and I went for the counseling to select which stream I should participate, I think fortunately there were a couple of seniors which were placed before professors. So how the story goes is you go for the counseling, you fill up the form that these are the choices of the branches that you would like to opt for, and then you go to a senior who is probably in third year or the fourth year, and then you kind of share what you want to become in your life and how they can help you drive taking the decision, and then you go to the professor ultimately to kind of take further advices. So I think my answer I got when I spoke to my senior, he asked me like, what do you want to do in your life? I said, I really want to make a decent amount of money and a good quality of life for myself. And he said, do you really want to work hard to get there, or you want to just chill out? I said, why would I want to work hard if I can get it by just chilling out? And then he said, take up the chemical engineering, it will work for you. And I think that's the point of time I took my chemical engineering, and that's where the whole journey started.
And that was an interesting start in itself. But how, I want to talk about that point to your becoming an entrepreneur and co-founder of Wakefit.
Yeah. So what happened is I joined this college in 2006, IIT rookie, became the chemical engineer, passed out as a graduate in 2010. I was a decent chap throughout my 4 years, a decent IITian where study for 2-3 hours a day. Mostly watched a lot of TVs, played games in the game. It's just typical college life. I think enjoyed a lot. And post that, I got a job in this German MNC called Bayer Material Science. We call it Bayer. And then I was a sales manager there. That was my first job in my career, where I became a salesman for selling chemicals. And then I used to visit a lot of people in northern part of India specifically, in the footwear industry, in the furniture industry, in appliances industry, cold storage industries. I think I worked for 4.5 years, and I kind of served different industries altogether. The interesting part came when I started serving the diversified industry. So you can say it was a non-standard industry. For example, you have automotive industry, you have footwear industry, you have furniture industry, and then you have everything else industry, which is called as diversified industries. So, and this is the place where you get to kind of invent, innovate, think differently how you can bring your chemical into the into the production. So a couple of examples I'll give you to kind of link it better. I think I learned a lot of people in this group would know the Game of Thrones, and the people use those swords,
Yeah.
the blades, the daggers, and
Yeah.
they're generally not made up of metal, by the way. I'm sure a lot of people would know this, but we used to make it out of polyurethane. I mean, it looks like a dagger, but it's not a dagger.
Wow.
It's a foamy stuff, right? And I created that product. Then I created cricket bat because the forest department in India was getting very strict in terms of utilizing some sort of woods from certain forest. So availability of the woods was very difficult. We created a bat using a polyurethane. So that was again one of the project I did. So very innovative projects, but very small scale industries I touched with. And I think I learned very peculiar thing about those small scale industry, and that's where my movement of entrepreneurship came in. I think I realized that you really don't need to be having a lot of money to start up a business.
Mm.
A small factory with just 5-10 people working around, and you being a owner of that factory can also do a decently good business, I can see. The second thing is that you really don't need to work hours and hours and hours just to get to a certain number of the revenue numbers. I could see, there were a couple of owners, business owners, uh, those who had just worked for 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, but they've spent the time in the past for about 10 years, and now they're spending just 4 hours, 5 hours. So I think that also gave me an indication that, boy, if you want to make money, you really don't have to work for hours and hours and hours. Like it's not so difficult to make money. It's just about a couple of choices that you make. I think that's where I realized that if I'm working as a salesman, working 12 hours a day, my boss calls in the morning, where are you going today morning to sell chemicals? And when I come in the evening, he asks me, how much did you sell? Where did you go? How many kilometers that you have ridden your bike, in your taxi? And what have you done throughout the day? And it felt like constant pressure on building the revenue, getting the payments collected, just building the reputation, working on the new projects. I said, if I had to invest this much of time of my life in
Mm.
setting up my own factory, I could do much better than I was doing as far as the professional career is concerned. So I think that's where the whole journey started. I think that's where I felt that something I need to do, and I did my first entrepreneurial stint where I started innovating for the furniture industry, for the automotive. I think I'll give you a more practical example. You've seen the bus seats, right? So the bus seats are more curved, like they have shapes. They're not flat in nature. So these are molded foams. So I opened up
Mm.
a factory for molded foams. Did some chemical innovation there. I was able to reduce prices of commodity by about 20% or so. But I think this was a decently good start. I left my job, got an investor within a week of launching my product. Launching my product is a very interesting story. I think I had created my whole
I want
own.
you I want you to hold on to that for a second because I'm still trying to understand this. So from everything you've told me, Ankit, there was somewhere there always an entrepreneurial streak in you. And in addition to that, you had this urge to do something on your own. If you're going to work so hard, why not do something on your own? And since you'd enjoyed these projects, you figured you might as well embark on your own. Now at that point when you're thinking of setting up on your own, and I'm asking you this only because in India a lot of our families have a say in the choices we make, at least at some point. Is Ankit at that time free to make the choice he wanted, or did you have to rebel a bit?
Okay. So it was not so easy, of course, because I come from a traditional background where my mother is a housewife and my father is a government employee, and then we were barely making decent amount of money in the family to kind of, decently eat up, stay in a decent place and all that. But we never had a mindset in our family that somebody's going to just leave the job and start something of his future. So it was so disruptive of a thought process for a typical Indian family, of mine specifically, uh, that why are you leaving this job? Like, aren't you happy with the salary that you're making? Aren't you happy that every month salary is going to come to you, right? You don't have to look forward to whether it will come out. So those lot of questions were there, but I think there is a. I think I somehow had this very decent amount of trust in myself that even if worst happens, let's say if I end up starting the business and anything worst sort of happens that I have to close down the business, let's say in a couple of months or years, what is the worst in my life? I started looking forward to what is worst. And then I
Mm.
started explaining it to my parents. See, what is my age? I'm just 24, 25. That's where I'm starting up my business, right? Even if I fail maybe in 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, 5 years, what is there? I'm just going to be 27, 28, 29, worst 30, right?
Mm.
So, I mean, age is just a number, right? You can always learn so many things at such an early stage, but when you get to an age of 35, 40, 45, 50, it becomes more and more difficult because you start extending your family. A lot of people start getting dependent on you. I think there is a stage of life where you really get to experience a lot. You can just experiment in life, and the confidence that you get because you have a very nice degree from IIT in your hand, you can always get a job in the market if you want, right? So I think I was able to persuade my parents. Anyway, it was a little easy. So and in
So
fact,
you
when I
make a so you make a good argument. You're convinced that this journey is for you. What happens next?
so this happens, and then I started, converted my room into a laboratory because as I told you, I was working on an innovative idea of on creating something which is just a I'm sorry. Yeah. So I started working on this idea of creating the foam, the molded foam at a much cheaper price. This commodity of the foam is sold at per kg price in the market, just like any commodity. As a diesel sells at 70 rupees per kg. Like every petrol pump you go to, you get a 60 rupees or 70 rupees, whatever the present rates are. Similarly, the foams are sold in a very similar way in the market. It's a commoditized product. And I was able to break through a technology by I was able to reduce the price of the product by about 20%. Just imagine, a one petrol pump is selling at 70, and I was able to just sell it at 67 rupees, and I was still profitable.
And
So
at this point, you're doing this on your own, Ankit, or did you have a partner?
no, I was alone.
Okay.
We were two friends staying in a 2 BHK apartment in Noida, and
Okay.
we both had one room, and then I created a laboratory in my own room, and I was just by myself. I think I would spend Saturday and Sundays, go to the local shops, the local milling shops, the lathe shops, milling shops, turning shops, metalworking shops rather, and I would come out all greasy, all black in the night. On the Saturday Sunday it was like full. I will go full 2 days were on holiday as a MNC. I think on Saturday Sunday were off. I would spend full days, but on the weekdays I will come back by 7 o'clock from my office again, go back to those places. I think my laboratory, my home, and that the lathe place became my next 6 months a place to stay. I started everything there. So that's the point where I started innovating my concept, my theory that I was putting in, and fortunately within 6 months I was able to come up with a product which was actually what I wanted to sell in the market. I showed it to an investor, and this investor was really shocked that there are people in the companies who are working for months and years to kind of do that, and I was able to achieve it. Within
So
six
you
months.
had investor interest before you actually sold your product?
No, it was not like that. So as I said, I created a laboratory. I was alone by myself. I created a product in the laboratory, then showed it to an investor, and that investor was shocked to see that is it 20% cheaper price in a commodity is possible. And that is the moment itself we decided to invest in this. And I think I got my first investor within a week.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But I've also heard I've worked with a fund before, United Seed Fund, and I've always heard that there's two sides to that coin, right? One is you get the fund, and then comes the pressure. What happens then, Ankit? How long before you get your first customers?
Yeah.
What are those early hundred? I'd like you to talk to me about those first 100 days
Yeah.
from when you spoke to the investor. It looked like you had a really cool product.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
So I got this product. I got this investor. We started setting up a factory. I think that was the easiest part where you have to spend the money to get machineries working and all of that. But to hire people is very important. To put up factories is very important. To set up rentals is very important. But what becomes difficult is to run the show now, right? So I
Hmm.
think the first 1 month was very easy for me to kind of set up things because you just have to meet the right people, buy the right machines, get the right people to work for you. It was easy. But I think the complexity starts after a month when your machines are up, the people are looking up to you like, boss, we need to run the machines, give us orders. Like that's the point, you have to find orders for yourself. So started going to the market, and I think I think I should just still share this. I don't know why, but I should share this. That was the lowest point in my life when I see that when I was working for an MNC and I used to visit people really used to bring me up. The CEOs of the company would ask, anybody that whenever this guy comes, directly send him to me. Or the purchase head would entertain me in the way that, please, or he'll offer me coffee, tea, biscuits, all of that to, just talk to me and kind of get good deals from buyer side. But when I was on my own self, I think I had to wait for 6 hours, 8 hours continuously. And I remember there were 2 3 companies, and there were 2 3 purchase managers of those companies. I was sitting right there at 9 o'clock because this guy doesn't like people coming late and all that. I was just sitting at 9 o'clock in his office reception, and
Mm.
he didn't call me till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then finally he called me up, "Ki aap kab tak baithe rahoge? What are you doing till now?"
Wow.
And then I said, "Sir, I've come to meet you. I told you, remember that I gave you the call that I'm coming today." "Oh, I forgot, I forgot." But this guy had already seen me a couple of times, right? So these kind of stories happen, and you get so demoralized. And I remember that, waiting, traveling all day, all night, without money, much. I didn't have much of money in my hand because that investor only gave the money to set up the factory, but not to run my own personal expenses.
What saw you through this period, Ankit?
I think that was the hardest part of my life. I think that was the time where I started breaking internally. I started losing trust on myself. I started feeling so bad that, what decision have I taken in my life? I started sort of getting into depression.
Mm.
Uh, that I could not sell the product to the customers that I invited.
Mm.
I could not manage the production the way I wanted to do it. I
Mm.
could not make my investors happy, this investor happy, because he was expecting a decent amount of return. In fact, I could not do much of anything, and in fact, it became so difficult for me that even if I had to do lunch, I started. Typical in the office, you when you want to have a lunch, you open up your lunch, so you share lunch with your friends and employees, right?
Mm.
But what I started doing is, because I was so alone in those days, that I would take my car out, I'll drive it for about 5 kilometers, and I remember that tree that was on a lonely road. Under that tree, I'll open up my car, open the gate of it, and just have my lunch. And I feel so happy that that nobody's actually looking at me. That धंधा कहाँ है, office कहाँ है, business क्या है, कब पैसा आ रहा है, कब आ रहा है, right? I felt so relieved when I had that lunch bite by myself. So I think you go through such hard phases when the first time you kind of see the real world outside, when you're working on your own. I think that is something I saw in those days, and that made me even I regret today that those times came in my life. But I think those were the very important times that I had to see, and I feel fortunate that that point of time it happened to me, because I think earlier the better that you get broken up, you become more stronger, more. You started looking for a longer vision. You started thinking more deeper and more insightful rather than just being very instinctive. I think I was very
What
immature in my.
lesson? What lesson did you think that taught you? One is, of course, resilience and patience. Those are traits. But in that time when you were not able to crack those deals,
Yeah.
was there a lesson that
Yeah,
taught
so I think one of the lessons that I learned, I think a couple of lessons. One of the lessons that I learned is you have really got to think very, very deep before you start your entrepreneurial spirit. You just cannot think out of a blue air, discuss with somebody, and just start on. You really, really got to think that how things are going to happen. Of course, you can always expect some roadblocks will come, something that you've not thought about will come, but you really got to do your work of thinking enough. I think that's what I learned first. Second is on the realistic expectation side of it. Maybe at the pace that you want to grow in the beginning, at the pace that you want to sell your products out there in the market, the appreciation that you're looking forward to from the people, you probably might need to soften down those expectations of yours, that you really have to kind of make sure that the final goal will come to you, the destination will still come to you. But I feel you really got to see that there's no company just built in months or years. It really, really takes years for you to kind of. So this is what I learned. Like you have to really invest time, think through. These are two important aspects before you start your startup.
when did when did the story start changing? When did Ankit, who is prefers to be away from office, have his lunch alone because he's really struggling through a difficult time? When did that point change to an Ankit where you felt like, hey, there's hope, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to make it work? What happened?
So, I kept on trying that this business should somehow survive. But I think after 3 to 4 months of running this business, I realized that there's no end to this, and then I have to wind it up. So imagine within 4 to 5 months of you starting up, investing everything that you earned in your life, all your dreams have shattered down, all everything is gone, and your parents are also looking up to you like, what did you do with your life? I mean, you're so hopeless. So imagine what happens to you after 5 months. I was totally gone, and then I had to wind up the business, sell off the machines at a cheaper prices, made huge losses, took loan from banks that I had to pay, took loan from my father that I had to pay. Whatever money I had saved, that was gone. So everything was gone. Now what happened is I started living my life regularly, started looking for a job, and I started giving interviews. And I got into one company, and that's a separate story. But I'll tell you what happened in this between. What made me come back. So this entrepreneurial spirit inside me was always awake. Like even if even if I saw a chaat wala or a nukkad pan shop, I thought this guy is able to make money, right? Why am I not able to make money? What is wrong with me? Like that was one inspiration that if this guy can be happy with just making 10,000, 20,000 rupees a month, why am I looking at I'll be making crores and crores in just a month? Or my business would be thriving through the roof, and people would be applauding here and there in so quick time. So that was one thing that I realized. Second is, what happened is I started visiting more and more people because when I was looking for a job, I was also looking for a parallel opportunity if I can do something with the existing business because I was in the process of winding up the shop, the factory. I was still contemplating if there were any ways I could still survive in the factory, and then I met a couple of people in the mattress industry. And surprisingly, what happened is that I found somebody who was a dealer of a very known brand in India, and he came to be, a family friend, a friend's friend, sort of a friend. And they started sharing yarn to me, and I spoke to him that how people buy mattresses, what happens, when they come to the showroom, what are they looking at, and then I think a couple of conversations, and then I started visiting distributors, suppliers, and all that. I realized that this is a market where things are actually broken, and I can do something about it. So what I did as an experiment is because Amazon, it was December 2014 if I remember precisely. What I did is because I belong to that industry, I knew a lot of people who were manufacturing mattresses for big companies and they had their own brands also. So I said I want to sell mattresses. I went to them. I said, "Sir, I want to sell mattresses. Would you be able to help me in case I get orders? Would you be able to give me the mattresses at a price which is comfortable between you and me?" But I might not come with saying give me 100 mattresses, 200 mattresses. I might come back to you every week and saying that give me 2 mattresses, 3 mattresses. I mean, don't expect this, but would you be able to help? And this guy said, yeah. Why? I mean, he was a good friend. He helped me, and I listed my products on Amazon. And that was a time I think Amazon was also building a lot of categories, especially the furniture category, the mattress category. They were trying to build up. And I was one of the first maybe online company who was selling mattresses in India at that point of time. I just launched my products, and and you won't believe. I launched the product first day, second day, third day, nothing happened. And the fourth day, I got my first mattress order. That too, I sold a latex mattress order to a Japanese couple based out of Jaipur. And this guy called me that. So this guy called me and said, uh, asked me questions about the mattresses, like if the cover is also made up of cotton, also very technical questions about the mattresses. So I answered them, and I think that is the point of time I realized that this is something which is there are people who are willing to buy mattresses. I think got a conviction that there's somebody, and then I kept on waiting. I kept on looking for other people. And then other 2 days after that, I got one more order. Then I think I started getting 2 orders a day, then 3 orders a day. I think the moment I started hitting 30,000 to 40,000 rupees per day without really, burning my hat throughout the day that what is happening. And then Amazon was really pushing a lot of advertisement in the market to buy matters and all. And I think I just became lucky and I realized that, hey, this is the moment I think people are there who are willing to trust you even if you're selling your products online. Even the products are like matters which are very experiential in nature. You can do that. So I got a very certain belief that this is not the end of my life in terms of my aspirations for being an entrepreneur. And that is the second step I took. I launched my products. I kept on working on finding more nitty gritties about the business. And today we what Wakefit is.
I have two questions here. One is, and again, this is more me, the investor, the prior investor in me asking. We always find um, the best companies are run by complementary partners, right?
Yeah.
It's what do you bring to the table, and what does Chaitanya bring to the table?
All right. So I think when I started Wakefit, it was December 2014, and I met Chaitanya in October 2016 or something like that. I think about 1.5 years, 2 years after I started Wakefit. So, so yes, of course. I mean, in the beginning, I was all alone. I used to handle. I mean, Amazon was my partner those point of time. Other than me, there were just a few helpers and a good friend of mine from the college. I think he was my partner then, and he used to help me delivering orders in time, taking feedback of customers. We are a very customer centric company from the beginning, and he used to help me kind of get feedback from market that people are not happy with this product, people are expecting this in the product. I used to make changes, do iterations in the product, and that's how I made it better and better. But I met Chaitanya specifically to him. I think I met him at the Tabs when we both were working at a startup called as Akosha, and then named as Tabs. We joined in the same team. We were working in the operations department, and we became a good friend because we both had lost a couple of startups to ourselves. I think he also had a very similar fate. We matched on the frequency, and we studied, can we do something together or something like that. So uh, then eventually Chaitanya, getting on board. He was really good. He also had a startup at that point of time, and he was running some internet startup at that point. He used to write a lot of blogs, and the people who were writing, there was a lot of content that he used to sell in the market. Uh, and he had a small tech team, a design team, with the content team, and I think he was very, very complimentary in terms of building the digital aspect of the business. Wherein, when I wanted to launch my own website, he was very, very helpful. His team was able to put out the website within 2 weeks of me, realizing that we want to do it. So I think that's where the journey started between both of us. I think what we see when we work together, the most complementing things that we see is that there are certain areas that if he has spent a lot of time, I think he does a really nice job. Where I spend a lot of time, I do a lot of time. So I think it's about giving time to each other, finding out where you really can drive a lot of business, and then you come to an agreement. So
It's almost like a good marriage, right? They always say a good partnership in a company is like a good marriage.
so
Uh,
you really have to invest in that. I
yeah.
would definitely say that. I think we both have invested a lot of time with each other. I think that's how it works. That's for sure.
Ankit, what is your ambition and vision for the company today? From that Ankit who was surprised when that first Japanese couple bought your first mattress to today you have a solid, legit business. People recognize your product. But from here, what's your vision?
See, Sanjay, I think we want to become a brand which is single point focus on home solutions company. Basically, we say that if you get four walls, give us everything else. I mean, we'll take care of it. I mean, give us walls, we will give you home. Give us walls, we'll give you bedroom. Give us walls, we'll give you dining room. I mean, stuff like that. So I think we want to become a brand which is so popular, so famous among people that people love us for the work that we do, the kind of designs that we launch, the kind of prices that we do. If you look at it from a perspective of a user or a consumer, I think you would find that we sell products at a very, very affordable price. I think there's a huge gap in the market where
Uh,
if you want to buy a good quality furniture, you would really not find at a very affordable prices. Uh,
Yeah, I checked your website out today and I was very, very pleasantly surprised for the kind of products and the pricing. It's extremely affordable. So clearly you've cracked something there. But Ankit, I want to ask you about Ankit, the person. Maybe it's the same. Uh, 5 years from now, you've told me the vision for Wakefit. But what about 5 years from now for Ankit? Is that married to Wakefit's journey? Or is there something else that you see?
no, I I think this is my another wife, other than my obvious wife. But I think we are going to be having a very long and very enjoyable time. I don't think even if sometimes I feel if I have to get let's say go public someday, or let's say maybe get an exit for this company for the investor and all that, I cannot imagine myself doing anything else.
And that's amazing to be at that place of knowing that you are exactly where you want to be 5 years from now. I think that's an incredible place to be in. Ankit, do you have an entrepreneur icon, someone you look up to, or some person you looked up to who's inspired you?
Not really. But what I do is I think I read a lot of books. I
Hmm.
think I get inspiration from very, very small, small things. I think I'll read something about let's say Amazon, what did Amazon do? What did let's say Flipkart did? What Ola did? I think I'll read here and there, and then I think I'll get inspiration from what work that people have done. As such, there's no icon I follow.
What does Ankit do for fun? Does Ankit do? I mean, I'm sure you're enjoying being a business person and entrepreneur, but do you have time off? What happened during lockdown? Did you learn a new hobby?
No, I think I have a young kid. I have a 18 months old daughter. I think that's all the fun that I get right now. And we spend a lot of time in the morning. We'll go for a walk for 45 minutes, 50 minutes in the morning. Sundays, I think I'll spend full day with her. I think this is amazing.
What's your daughter's name, Ankit?
My daughter's name is Anaya. Anaya.
Anaya?
Yeah.
And Anaya in 18, 20 years from now comes to you and says, Dad, I don't really want to get a job. I want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What would Ankit's response be?
Oh, I would probably say that, why did you wait for 20 years to say this?
And on that note, Ankit, I think this was a really good conversation. Thank you. I really like having these conversations because they're real and they're inspiring. And I'm sure somewhere out there, a couple of people who've listened to this, and especially those trials that you went through and didn't give up, will be inspired to be entrepreneurs. So thank you so much.
Thank you.